As back-to-school season starts, or so we hope, it is a school year like no other, with an estimated 60-some-odd% of the learning now shifting online instead of in the classroom. Almost all of us, we want the same thing. We want kids in the school. It's better for them, it's better for the parents, but to get to the point where it's both safe and practical, we're dealing here with more uncertainties than we've ever seen before. I want to bring in a person who represents superintendents and administrators from coast to coast to get the perspective from someone trying to juggle balls, so many at one time. Daniel Domenech, he is an executive director of the American Association of School Administrators. He's kind enough to give us some time. And Dan, I had an interesting week. I dropped a kid off at college and, they're trying to live in some hermetically sealed bubble up there as best they can, but they're doing everything they can. I'll give them credit to do it the right way. And I got 2 more kids in high school supposed to start this week. And we get a note yesterday saying, never mind, we're pushing it back another week. And that's a school with a ton of resources, and what I'm getting from between the lines is everybody's got a plan, but when they started to try and put it into effect, they started realizing all the flaws or all the unexpected realities to do with it. And again, that is from a very well-funded district with a more condensed student body and all the rest. I can only imagine what you're hearing from coast to coast from schools, rich, poor, and in the middle, as they're trying to juggle all these uncertainties at the same time here. Is it even more complicated than we imagine?
It is, Richard. It's been unbelievable, and I can tell you that superintendents are really besides themselves in terms of everything that's going on. This process began last March, and school superintendents and their school boards began planning on reopening for schools and by April, late April, early May. And you know that back then, and we were part of that development with our superintendents. There were basically 3 models. One was opening business as usual, with the thinking that by September, now we're going back to May, by September, we would have had this thing under control and it would be possible to do that. The second model was one that was more cautious, and that's the hybrid model, which is you bring in part of the student body, because you want to do the social spacing that's so critical to the process. You want them to be wearing masks. You want to have all of the safety factors involved with a lower number of students. And the last model was the remote learning, a continuation of how schools closed last year. And nobody thought that that was the model, the preferred model. Yet here we are today. And in reality, the majority of school districts are looking at opening remotely, with a component of districts doing the hybrid model. And that's usually in areas where there's low enrollment, mostly rural areas, where the infection rate is very, very low, and they can take that chance. But very few schools have gone the route of opening as if everything was normal. And we saw in the news in early August when districts did that, and we saw the pictures of high school kids in a hallway packed together without any mask. And we knew that within a matter of a couple of days, all of those schools had to shut down because of infections. So right now, the superintendents had plans as to how they were going to open. They were counting, by the way, on federal dollars that were going to allow them to do all of the safety measures, like the protective equipment that's necessary, like the busing that would be necessary if you're busing a smaller number of students to the building. All of these factors, no money came through. They have to make a decision to open, and that's the problem. Whatever they decided to do back then, if it was the hybrid model or in person, had to take a back seat because they just don't have the safety measures in place. They don't have the money to implement them, and the safest thing to do is to continue with remote learning until further notice.
And, I was going to get to the math a little later, but let's get to it now. I'm trying to put myself in your shoes. And you got superintendents calling you. And I remember when I was told by this administration that by April everything was going to be terrific. Why would schools even close down? How crazy, okay? But nobody, at least if you believe them, thought that come fall we'd be where we are. Nonetheless, I'm thinking you got to get kids on a bus to get to school. You can't have the kids sitting together, so you need more buses to take the kids to school. When you get to school, you can't have all the kids like they used to be in the same classroom because you need to have 6 feet of separation. The school is going to have to find the money to create the partitions and all the separation. Then you got the teachers, some with underlying conditions, who can't be in the classroom because of the threat to their lives. So you're going to need more teachers here, and you're going to have a hybrid about some at home and some in the school. You're going to do all that, and then, oh, by the way, we're going to tell you that you, the state, or you, the municipality, you're not going to have the money to do all that. We're not giving you extra funding. We're not even giving you what you had before because now states have no tax revenue coming in. So they're cutting things like schools, frontline healthcare workers, and even law enforcement because the federal government won't make the money available. You're asked to do more with less, and I'm sure I've left stuff out here, but it's crazy.
It is, absolutely, and that's the frustration, and that's the complaint. And by the way, it's a no-win situation for these superintendents. They have half of the parents that want their children in school because they're working parents, and they have to have that childcare function. And yet you have the other half that don't want to send their children to school because they're afraid that the school is not the safe environment that they want for their children. So whatever you do, you're going to have half of your population, half of your community against what you've done. We're seeing lawsuits right now all over the country against superintendents for not opening school and for opening schools. Either way, and of course, you mentioned the teachers before. That's a factor right now. The teacher shortage, the staffing is a problem. With a lot of the teachers saying, no, we're willing to teach remotely, but we're not going into a classroom because we have conditions that would prevent us from doing that. So right now, even staffing is a problem. There are districts that were planning on opening the hybrid model and could not, and had to go to the remote learning because they didn't have sufficient staff to accommodate the children that were coming in. So it is just an incredible situation. This is not going to get any better anytime soon, by the way. This is going to be going on all year long, probably until spring, late spring, when there is a vaccine and there is some kind of herd immunity that has made it a safer environment. But for this first semester, guaranteed, even those schools that are opening in person, they're going to have infections. They're going to have to shut down, then probably reopen again. And this is going to be going on. So a lot of districts, by the way, have just said, for this first semester, we're just going to be online for this first semester and hope for better come the second semester.
And another villain, if you want to use the word, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, Dan, I'll go there, but you have an education secretary who is actively working against the self-interest or the interest of not only the superintendents, but the kids. And by that I mean, Betsy DeVos is pushing this idea here that if you don't have all the kids in the classrooms, you're being derelict. But I got 2 schools less than 20 minutes from the studio I'm broadcasting, one in affluent public high school, and they've got air filtration systems. And they've got a hybrid learning system, and a lot of at least one parent is affluent enough they can stay home or they have childcare for the kids. I got another school district, again within 20 minutes of where I'm broadcasting, air filtration systems. You kidding me? They don't have any of that. And I know one of the parents who's asthmatic and her child's asthmatic, but she's got to send the kid to school because they won't have enough money to pay the rent if both mom and dad don't work. And they don't have any Wi-Fi at home. We saw that, I thought that heartbreaking picture of those kids sitting on a curb in front of a fast food place to get the free Wi-Fi so they could do their work. There are haves and have-nots in this, and anyone who thinks different's kidding themselves. Am I right?
Absolutely. And we saw that right from the get-go. Even today, right now, there are anywhere from 11 to 14 million students who still don't have a computer, and as many students who still don't have internet access at home. So when we talk about all of these school districts having no choice but to go to remote learning, what's going to happen to those children who are not capable of remote learning because they don't have a computer or they don't have the internet access at home? So what a lot of the districts are doing, frankly, is that they're attempting to provide for the needs of those children by sending packets of material home that the teachers are putting together. In smaller rural communities, by the way, where they don't have internet service, not because the parents can't afford it, they just don't have the connectivity. Those wires have not been laid down yet. What those districts are doing is attempting to bring the children into school. The infection rate in those rural communities is less. There are fewer students in the classroom. So they're attempting to do it that way, because without that, the children would not be getting any kind of education. But the difference between the haves and the have-nots, it's a huge indicator of why there's so much inequity in our schools, why it's impossible for a school district that spends a third of what a neighboring community that spends 3 times more per student can provide their children with the same kind of quality education. That's a big factor. We've always known that it's there, but now with the pandemic, it's really come to light in a very pervasive manner.
And Dan, we're out of time, but the next looming fight, hopefully we get a vaccine that we can actually trust, that's not politicized. And when that day comes, good luck having every parent in today's where all the science and medicine is now questioned here and politicized by everyone, it seems. Imagine getting everybody vaccinated like we need to have for the schools. But as I say, that a fight for another day. Dan, I wish you the best of luck. You're going to need it. I appreciate the time tonight.
Thank you, Richard. Good to be with you.
And up next, we know that President Trump certainly likes to talk and act like a tough guy, even though when it was his time to serve, he ducked military service due to a phantom case of bone spurs. Well, after the break, a father who lost his son during a mission the president never planned for correctly tees off on the president for what he calls his lack of courage.